Welcome to the Unleashing the Power of Consumerization presentation. My name is Jason Lesnick. I'm on the Windows Client Product Management team at Microsoft. And it's interesting. I've been with Microsoft for 14 and a half years, and I spent about 8 years in the field in Chicago. And I kind of survived with most of, not all of you, Slammer, NIMDA, and Blaster, and all those other fun events. Group policy, locking down machines, total cost of ownership, all the stories about what drove enterprise IT departments in terms of being able to manage and secure the environment. And a lot has changed over that time. And I'm sure that all of you are familiar with the term consumerization of IT. How many of you are actively looking into enabling consumerization within your organizations? Pretty much all of you. That's pretty consistent with what we're seeing. It's interesting. A couple years ago, when Gartner first started talking about it, it seemed like it was kind of a hype. And quite honestly, it could still be a little bit of a hype. But it's a lot more of an active hype now. Organizations are forced to be looking into how to enable end users to bring in devices, use their applications, have multiple devices, and really access information and their environment from anywhere. Certainly the iPad sparked a lot of this a year ago, as a lot of organizations are bringing them in. They're very cool. Executives like them, and they basically go and tell the IT department, bring them in. And what we've been hearing consistently is that the IT department doesn't necessarily want those types of devices in, but nonetheless they're told that they need to enable them. So it really kind of provides a tension between doing what you're told to do and doing it in a way that is kind of, still not totally letting go of the concept of manageability and security and all those other things. And so the purpose of this presentation is to give you some ideas about how you can enable that type of service offering within your organization. So first off, I want to say I've got two prizes here. The first one is this is actually really cool. This is a 4 gig USB stick. It's a little bit bigger than the normal ones that you would keep on your keychain. And the reason why is that this will actually plug in, and it has a battery in here. And there's a bunch of little dongles that come with it, and it could charge your phone in an emergency. So this is actually probably the coolest swag I've seen at TechEd in a long time. There was a USB cup holder that I saw a few years ago, but that'll either fry your laptop or burn down your building. So we decided to go with these instead. So this is for what I would judge as the best question of the day. So we'll just keep it up here. This is a Crunch Bar that I took out of the freezer about an hour and a half ago. And this is for the worst question of the day. I'm an equal opportunity jokester. And so basically, I've got several demos, and unfortunately, this little netbook here is not may not participate in the demos if I can't get it to project well. But the goal is, it's a 200-level session, but the goal is to help you think about what you need to be thinking about and what kind of Microsoft offerings or partner offerings are available to help enable those situations. So it's interesting. We had a customer briefing, what we call a Desktop Advisory Council, about 6 or 8 months ago. And one of the sessions, we were talking to them about consumerization. And there were a few of them that still had the response of, heck no, I'm not allowing any of these things in. I control my environment. I don't care what kind of device it is. I don't care who tells me to bring them in. I'm not doing it. And on the other side, I literally, and back to like my time with being in the field and speaking to customers about locking down their environment and making sure everything is secure and all that stuff, what surprised me was I actually had a few people, and these were like director-level IT pros or higher, literally throw up their hands and say, you know what, I get the point. I'm told not to care anymore. Instead of trying to secure everything, just secure what I can, but give me the device. And it really kind of surprised me because I grew up with IT pros, and I know security is important, and we had all the lost laptops, and we had a stat when Windows Vista and Windows 7 were rolling out, 500,000 laptops lost or stolen each year. You need to use BitLocker or other drive encryption just to make sure it was safe. People were freaking out. They had to write the letters to the customers and all that, all this and that, because of all the different regulations and HIPAA and everything else. And now it's relaxed because of the power of the form factor of the device itself. And so, again, there really is this tension. I actually met with an analyst research firm a couple years ago, an IT analyst research firm, and they were telling me that they were hired by a large enterprise organization, not by the IT department, but by the HR department. And basically the problem was they couldn't hire people out of college because their IT department was seen as being slow, behind the times. I'm coming out of college, my PC at home is faster than what I've got at work, or it's just so locked down, or it's running an older version of the operating system, or I've got a Mac, whatever the case might be. And they literally were having a hard time bringing in new talent because they were being perceived that way, whether it was true or not. And basically the challenge to the analyst firm was to help the HR department figure out how to encourage the IT department to enable this, because it is a new era, or get rid of them, which was quite a shock. So I know that we're all seeing that. Even Microsoft, we're being challenged with how do we develop our products to enable that. Cross-platform, which I'm sure you're going to be shocked at hearing. So clearly, life and work are really indistinguishable. People work at home. People work at Starbucks. They work at whatever coffee shop it happens to be. They all work different types of hours now. We had some focus groups that some of the folks on my team went to a couple weeks ago or so, and they got a really interesting point. When we say you can work anytime, anywhere, that's a bad thing to say, because people don't want to work anytime, anywhere, but they do want to work on their time and where they want to be. It's not you can work 24 hours a day. It's you can work at your choice. And for some people, that might be on the weekend, or I'm going to go in late, or I'm going to, I want to work on the train. And all of that requires a lot of different capabilities, connectivity, security, etc. And then again, with all of the different types of devices that are coming out, and the devices running many different types of operating systems, people are buying these up left and right. I can't watch a half-hour sitcom on TV anymore without like 7 different ads for smartphones, whether it's a Windows phone or an Android phone or an iPad commercial. The marketing is just huge, and clearly people are eating it up. They're going and they're buying all these devices. Well, all those devices do the same thing. They connect up to the internet. They have local processing power. They can get to email. They can post your update to Facebook, and then you can play Angry Birds. And so everyone is choosing whatever they want to get the same end result. And that really has a challenge, because now I'm bringing it in, and I want you to give me my email. Well, why not? I've had a BlackBerry for years, so why can't I now get that on my Android device? Or why can't I get to that SharePoint site? I have a viewer right on this machine, on this phone, that has access to Office. All those different things are huge challenges. And so it's really hard to try to figure out what to do, but it's very clear that we need to do something collectively to enable this. And I'm going the wrong way. It's really bad when the presentation goes backwards. So I'm going to start out with just a really quick video. We've interviewed some folks, and we got some really good feedback, and we came up with a little bit of a cartoonish type of thing. Let's see, where did they put it? There we go.
So, it's only 10 a.m. on Monday morning, and you're ready to ditch the IT field for a less frustrating career, like a lumberjack or a piranha dentist. There's a new girl who thought it would be smart to upload sensitive legal docs onto a cloud app so she could work on them from home. Sharon from finance is hovering over your desk, waiting for her turn. She bought the new robot phone that reads your email out loud while it makes your morning coffee. And she wants you to set up her company email on it. Then there's Jimbo from marketing, who wants to know if he could trade in his 3-month-old tablet he just had to have for one of those new Magic Pad Savior of the World punch screen deals, which is definitely not on the list of approved devices. And while you're trying to explain these things to Jimbo, who just keeps saying, "Man, but the punch screen is so rad," you're thinking, seriously, Aren't you the one who's supposed to be making the IT decisions around here? Isn't it your job to provide employees the technology they need to do their jobs well, while factoring in things like budgets and security? At least that's how it used to be. People showed up in the morning, used whatever technology you provided them, did their jobs, and went home. And everyone started over the next morning. Things are changing. People have access to better and cheaper personal technology than they've ever had before. And technology isn't just changing how people work in general, it's actually blurring the lines between work and life by giving folks more influence and choice over how and where they work and what technology they use to get things done. This is consumerization, and it's impacting you and your company. Your job is to keep things safe, secure, and working properly. So how do you handle the risks that come with consumerization? Answer, you embrace the risks responsibly because the resulting opportunities are even greater. Consumerization is an opportunity for you to help people work in ways that better suit their jobs and their personalities. It's an opportunity to provide people with technology that makes them more productive and makes their work more enjoyable. Last time we checked, both of those things are good for business. So you have a choice. You can choose to resist consumerization, or you can choose to embrace consumerization responsibly and become a spearhead for the change it brings within your organization. Consumerization is happening, and it's good. Your organization becomes more productive with more choice. Jimbo is happy, and you're the hero. So if you're willing to say yes to the opportunities that consumerization brings, Microsoft is here to help.
So how many of you are faced with that situation today? Pretty common. How many of you have iPads right now in this room? How many of you are standardizing them, enabling your end users to use them? Yeah. So all of you, most of you at least, have or are going through choices and really kind of hard choices in terms of what to enable and what not to enable. And so regardless of the type of device, whether it's a Windows device, a PC, a laptop, a thin client, if it's a Motorola Zoom, Android, whatever the case might be, iPad, there's pros and there's cons, and there's benefits and risks. You know, for example, the smaller the device, the easier it is to get stolen. People want those devices. Heck, it's easier to steal an iPad than buying an iPad right now. Obviously, the security of it is a risk, not just the iPad, any device. Privacy as well. They're just not designed for that. They're designed for the consumer, for content consumption, to have fun, to show people. They collect and attract attention. Especially in this day and age, while the ability to enable consumerization is huge, the requirement to have IP protection and follow corporate and government regulatory compliance has not gone down. Those USB sticks are still being lost. The laptops are still being stolen. Your company's names could still be in the press when it happens. WikiLeaks is a perfect example of how important data protection happens to be, not only for the government, but also for organizations as well. And so there's always people trying to get to that data, and these types of devices, regardless of the vendor or the operating system, makes it easy for that risk to become a reality. Because they're not managed devices, you don't really know how safe they are. So there's a problem with them being outside of your end user's hands, but they're just as risky inside your user's hands. Are they being patched? Who are these application vendors? Is it malware? Is it something that's sending data across the web? And if that's okay, is it encrypted or not encrypted? Are they going to start installing applications on their device that trample over each other? If it's a PC, for example. How easily complex is it to get to the corporate data? I might make them very productive by being able to do that, but this really wasn't something that as an IT department I was budgeting or planning. So I'm going to have to go and either invest in additional middleware, additional connectivity, access points, whatever the case might be. And then finally, how do I manage them all? Is it possible to be able to look and set policy across those different devices to get at least the bare minimum of security so that I have to enter in a password or a PIN when I turn the thing on? And if it happens after 5 times, it bricks the machine, whatever the case might be. So those are all risks that we need to think about. So there's everything about your side, your pain points, the things that will cause you to stay up at night. And then there's also the benefits of being able to present that solution to kind of address that work-life blur and making people happy and productive anywhere. So we've identified some keys to success. This is asking to install some software. So what we try to do, and we have some white papers out on our website, and we've worked with Forrester to actually do some research on the impacts of consumerization. They'll do something called a thought leadership paper, and we've got it published up on our website. Basically what a thought leadership paper is, it's a paper that's sponsored by a vendor, but it's not a product-based paper. It doesn't mention the word Windows, for example, in it. They'll go off and they do research with their customers and their partners, survey-based research to find out impacts of certain things, and then they talk about the concept of solutions. And as one of the results of this thought leadership paper that we commissioned them to talk about are what is the impact and the levels of success by enabling consumerization. And some of the things that we're seeing organizations have to think about are in really 4 different areas: data, applications, the operating system and the hardware, and then the access to that through the network. So the things that you should always be thinking about is things like, how do you control the access to the data? And how do you manage, if you're going to, data backing up and restoring? Especially if it's a PC or a Mac, how do I make sure that that data is being kept? I did some research very recently on Mac and Windows machines, and I don't remember the exact number, so these aren't the exact numbers, but like 25% of Windows users back up their machines. Do you think that that's true? How many of you back up your machines? How many of you back up your machines after the first hard drive crash? Yeah, okay. According to the research, it was like double for Mac users. So at least the perception was that Mac users are backing up their data on a more regular basis. So whether that's true or not, it's different software, it's different mechanisms, it might be different file servers, but nonetheless, it's still the same important IP and data that's required. How do you deliver the applications to those devices? If it's cross-platform, do you deliver a lowest common denominator type of application, a web app, for example? Do you try to have the different platforms of the same app? So it's easy for a Mac. You can just buy Office 2011. I don't know how to do that on an iPad or on an Android device. So for those users, do I just have OpenOffice or QuickOffice? Do I just have readers? Do I just don't let them access those files at all? How do you support compliance reporting? With all of those apps, who's responsible for it? Who's responsible for the data as well, come to think of it? If it's licensed, who licensed it? Because at the end of the day, I'm probably responsible for it. Who owns the IP on the device? If you enable someone to hook up their personal machine, whether it's a PC or a Mac at home, a netbook device, this is not mine. I just want to make that clear. My 10-year-old son told me last night to put a Post-it on here that says, "Not my PC." But I did want to point out that this cute little pink laptop or netbook is not mine. If that is what I'm using to connect up to my machine or to my data at work, if this Dell Streak is connecting up and I'm able to sync my email and copy files down through Dropbox, and I've got specific IP on that device, what happens when I leave Microsoft? Who owns that data? It's my phone. How do I get that data off that phone, or off of my Mac, or off of my Android device, or whatever the case might be? Those are big issues. Who fixes the device? I was speaking with one customer that was enabling their organizations to buy iPads. And I said, well, are you buying the Apple Care? Are you buying some sort of service through a vendor to be able to come in and fix them? Or even Macs, anything else? I'm like, no, but we have a special deal with Best Buy. If it breaks, they can just go in and buy a new iPad, and they'll get like $100 off. Okay. I'll take my machine and break it and just go in and buy a new one. It can be very costly, and you lose a lot of control over what kind of device that is that they're buying. And then finally, how are you going to actually enforce network security? How many of you enforce network security today? Do you have a network access control? Okay. That's a really, really concerning point from a couple different areas. Getting devices on the network, making sure that they're safe, secure, and healthy. And then once they are on the network, being able to make sure that they're only accessing the information that you want them to access. And I'm talking far beyond just access control lists on a file system. We'll talk about those in a few minutes. So those are a lot of questions. As a product manager for Windows, part of our job is to help you make sure that your environments are secure while still being productive. So those questions keep me up at night. I can't imagine how they keep you up at night. So the second part is to really understand what are the principles to enable consumerization. How many of you looked at VDI in the past? Remember a few years back, VDI was for everyone? Just take all of your machines, you can save costs, just put them up in the data center. I remember a few years back we were talking about desktop virtualization, and I had one of our Microsoft consultants in the UK call me up the next day, and they said, one of my customers was at your event, and you were talking about desktop virtualization and VDI. They want to take all 65,000 of their users and put them in the data center. How do they do that? And my response was, they don't. And let's talk about exactly why they would want to move everyone into that one common delivery mechanism for the desktop. And the real bottom point is taking a look at your user community and find out what their needs are and what their risks are, because you're not going to find one size fits all. Just like you're not going to for VDI, you're also not going to for consumerization. Some users don't need any other extra device. If it's a call center, for example, you've set them up with thin clients, they're in the call center and they're doing their job and they're just fine. However, if you start to move and expand, you might have people with call centers working out of their house. And you're also going to save more money by not giving them a PC. They're going to use their machine at home. Those are two different types of users with two different needs. I've heard that President Obama's BlackBerry has a lot more security on it than what you guys have. So the White House IT department probably had to put a lot more special policies and factors in place to be able to protect him that they wouldn't typically do for aides or staffers, for example. If you take a look at your executive staff, depending on your organization and the vertical that you might be in, you might have to take extra special care with theirs that's going to be a lot more costly, but that's worth it. But you don't have to do that. You can have a different scaled-down solution for the sales rep, for example. So it really kind of boils down to what the user is doing, what kind of access they need, and what kind of risks they are. But again, it's not going to be one size fits all. For some people, having an unmanaged device is perfectly fine. All you're doing is getting to a virtual desktop or a thin client. I don't care what's on your machine. Some of you are going to have to be completely managed. I want to make sure that your machines are only accessing the resources that I want. In order to do that, I need to manage that via things like IPsec. At Microsoft, we do that with our machines so that the developers can get to our source code servers. I can't get to one, and it's not even just because I'm not in the right security group. We use IPsec to check who I am, what my machine is, and we literally drop the packet so my machine can't even touch those servers because I'm not a developer. And if I was a developer but I tried to access it from home, I probably wouldn't be able to as well. In order for that to happen, my machine needs to be domain joined. That is a fully managed machine. And then there's others that are just partially managed. My smartphone. They don't really care what I have on it. I bought it myself. But you know what? Because I am going to connect up to email, they enforce a PIN. And if I mistype my PIN, I don't remember how many times, it'll just wipe my machine. I brought the iPad home for the kids to play with a couple times. I have 10-year-old twins. Twice they've handed it back to me, and it was totally the out-of-box experience because they couldn't remember my birthday, and they kept screwing it up, and it bricked the device immediately. And that was because of Microsoft's IT policy that was being enforced through a tool that I'll show you in a few minutes. So once you've defined what the risks are and defined how you've you're going to kind of map out your solutions. How can we help you? What kind of technologies do we have? And there's a lot of different types of technologies available that both support user choice as well as manage the essentials. I don't know whether there's a solution out there today from any vendor that's going to give you complete manageability of these devices. By definition, you are giving up control at some point of these devices as people are bringing things in. So it's finding out what is your level of essentials for it. Some of these solutions are virtualization-based. Some are enterprise management. Some are more terminal server computing or remote computing. And some have to do with being in the cloud. So let's talk about each one of these. There's three main areas that we'll talk about today. The first one is about enforcing policy. I'm sure that all of you have some policies in place that talk about being able to either authorize a device. Only specific types of devices are allowed to hit the network or your email server. There needs to be a password policy in place. So if you're going to join your machine or your device to your corporate data, there's going to be a policy for the length of a password, the fact that a password actually will exist. And if that doesn't happen, I will remotely wipe your machine. Now, even that one is tricky because the laws are different around the world. I've been told by a few customers that operate in the UK that if it's not my device, I can't wipe it, period. So if I set up a policy to do that, it needs to be a corporately owned device, or else I'm actually breaking the law. The second area is around isolating devices and data, defining who the user is, what kind of access they need, and narrowing down that access so that you can give them what they need, and you don't have to worry about the risk that's associated with it. Now, all of these types of things are actually shipping today. It could either be networking access through things like server and domain isolation using IPsec. It could be access control and network protection through network access protection, or NAP. Or it could be data protection through things like rights management services. So anyone might be able to physically access the file, they just can't open it up. So if someone doesn't have the right password, for example, or they're not logged in, I might have stolen someone's device, but I can't access the file that's there. And then finally, there's actual access, remote access to the applications themselves. And we have products like Forefront Unified Access Gateway that you can expose part of your environment to a web portal through the internet and let people have access to those applications based on the health of the machines, even non-Windows devices. Terminal Server Gateway, remote desktop services, as well as full rich desktop support through VDI. So let's talk about enforcing some of the policy. What I talked about at Microsoft, where when we take our smartphones and connect them up to Exchange, we automatically get a password policy that's pushed down. And that's through Exchange ActiveSync. And basically the policies that we have said is that we require a password. It needs to be X amount in length and a certain amount of tries before it will just wipe the machine, wipe the device remotely. This will be managed as well in System Center Configuration Manager 2012, which leverages the Exchange ActiveSync connected devices and uses that protocol. So it lets you identify the devices that you have out there, first off. It lets you apply those policies, and it includes the remote wipe capabilities. Now, Exchange ActiveSync is actually something that we've licensed to other companies. So Apple supports it for their iPods and iPads. Android supports it, I believe 2.1 and higher, or 2.2 and higher. Symbian supports it as well. My understanding today is that BlackBerry does not support it. Now, what we've announced at MMS, in SCCM 2012, when it ships, we're also going to have that support within that enterprise management tool for those types of devices. So you'll be able to manage the policy of your non-Windows mobile devices through System Center, just like you would your Windows PCs as well. So this is a really big benefit as organizations have asked us to extend our management support. They only want the one tool, You already have it. You've already deployed it. You don't want to have to go out and buy another product to be able to do that. And so we're going to provide that capability. And again, it's leveraging EAS. So as other companies make devices with different operating systems, if they support EAS, we'll be able to manage it as well. So I'm just going to show you really quickly, assuming that I have my demo gods working on 2 of the 3 machines here at least. This is, so far so good, this is the console for System Center Configuration Manager 2012. And I'm going to get rid of that little bar. And basically what I'm showing you here is that we actually have an Exchange server connector. And within this Exchange server connector, we actually have different policies that we can set. And so, for example, we have things like the password policy. And so I can go in and edit this. I hope that people can see in the back. The screen resolution is a little bit small. But basically, I have the ability to, for example, require that password settings are on mobile devices. What is the minimum password length of characters? This is the area where IT pros can kind of screw around with the end users a little bit. We know that we've got that tension. Fine, you want the iPad? I'll give you the iPad. I hope you remember that 36-character password that's going to happen every 5 minutes when you click on it, but I'm giving you it. But again, we have to have a kinder, gentler IT pro policy here. When the password expiration comes in days, number of passwords remembered. Again, you can combine these in a lot of detail so that 36-character password will expire every other day, and you'll never be able to repeat it. But I'm giving you the iPad. That's good. And then the number of failed logon attempts before the device is wiped. This is the nuclear option for IT pros. If you combine this with everything else, you're going to have a lot of fun before those help desk calls start to call for your head. So again, you need to be a little responsible, but you can enable the users to use what they need as well. So all of these things are things that you can enable or disable just for the password itself. There's some other things as well. I'll just walk you through some of them. I'm not going to show you devices today, but do you allow internet sharing? Do you allow computer synchronization? Allow mobile devices that cannot be provisioned? So if I have a device that I cannot manage this way, you're not connecting to the servers. You're not going to be able to get Exchange or anything else. So I've got different ways to be able to manage those types of things. So this gives you a lot of really powerful capabilities to enable those types of devices and still manage them the way that you want to. Direct push when roaming. If I'm actually paying for your service, I don't want to be syncing up your phone while you're on vacation, for example. I made the mistake once. I went on a cruise. We left the kids with my parents. I didn't turn out so good, so I wanted to make sure that if something happened, they can call us before they damaged my children. And so I brought my smartphone, and I knew that I wasn't going to check my mail because my wife, I would have been in the news as one of the people that were pushed overboard and never found again. So I made sure I never checked my mail, but I forgot to turn off the sync. And so I was shocked by my $300 bill when I didn't even use the darn phone. And so I can, as an IT pro, I can manage that as well. I can also take a look. So once I've created those policies and deploy them, we will inventory the devices, and you can actually get several different reports. This is just one quick report about what you have out there. And so we at Microsoft actually apparently have a lot of Android devices and iOS devices and all sorts of stuff. This is just dummy data. But you can create a lot of reports based on the hardware inventory that you have within these devices. And you can keep trends, and you can perhaps try to standardize a little bit better, or work with your mobile carriers for a little bit better pricing on handsets that you know that your end users in your organization actually want. So look forward to this as we get into the release of System Center 2012 to help you manage those devices a little bit better. The second part is around isolating devices and data. How many of you have heard of the concepts of server and domain isolation? Okay, we were marketing this a little bit in the Windows Vista and the Server 2008 days. It's actually something that we use incredibly well within Microsoft We've got some case studies on this. Several universities have done this where they decided to kind of combine their faculty and admin and their student networks into one to kind of save costs. But they really needed to kind of separate and segregate the different user communities from different types of devices. And the concept here is to be able to identify specific machines, what they should access on the network. And so, for example, you can either isolate an entire domain. So, for example, at Microsoft, you can take your PC and plug it in. We also have wireless access, of course, where you have a lot more control at the wireless routers. But you could take a machine, go into any office, and just plug in the device. And if you're not a Microsoft employee, you're going to be able to get pretty much access to DNS, DHCP, and the proxy server to be able to get out and browse the web. You're not going to be able to access our domain controllers. You're not going to be able to access our file servers. And it has nothing to do with you not logging in. If we don't recognize the machine as being in one of our domains, the network traffic just doesn't go through. It just drops. And we use IPsec to be able to do that. And so basically what happens is you define the logical isolation boundaries, either a domain itself, which is simple to set up, or a server, and I'll touch on that in a second. That's the source code scenario that I was talking about. And then you enable specific users or PCs to be able to go through. And this is actually done through the Windows firewall and group policy. And you can even use Kerberos as the certificate authority mechanism. So there's not a lot that you have to deploy to get this done. And so when an unmanaged device tries to hit the network, it'll go to a resource server, and it will be blocked. And if it is a managed computer, in this, so it's in the domain, it's able to access domain resources, and it tries to get to a specific server. So for example, the source code servers, because my machine or my user account is not in the security group that's supposed to have access to that server, again, it just drops it. So it's not even a question of trying to hack or try to get the password or try to get to a specific port and do a vulnerability attempt to exploit the vulnerability. The data is just dropped, and we're doing it at the networking layer itself. If you're looking at doing something like this, what goes alongside of it is also network access protection. And so what network access protection allows you to do is, even before you plug that machine in, well, not before, as you plug the machine into the network or as you connect up to the wireless routers that we have, I want to take a look at your machine. Because you might legitimately need access to some of the resources, but I don't know if it's up to date. I don't know what software you have out there. Do you have any antivirus software on your machine? If you do, is it up to date? Remember that security vulnerability that we had, or the bug that we had in our database software 6 months ago that corrupted data if you're doing this and that? I want to make sure that your machine is patched before you actually get to that server. So what network access protection allows you to do is to create policies and define those policies will actually define the health of the machines themselves. In order to be healthy, I hate builds. I never know what's coming up. The user or the machine accesses or requests access. So for example, the first step is the router or the DHCP server, and it tries to get access to the network itself. And it is sending a health certificate back, and it's the infrastructure is going to validate that based on your policy. So for example, at Microsoft, before we used direct access, we still have it today, but I could take any machine that I have at home, I could have my little portable smart card reader and install our VPN software, and I can get in from home. Now, I might be connecting up from my kid's netbook, and I don't know what web pages they've gone to. I mean, Free Realms and all that other fun stuff, and they've downloaded all these little free games, and I forgot that. Even though I bought the netbook, it came with antivirus software, but I forgot to renew it 6 months ago, so it's running, but it's not really relevant. And Microsoft IT will look at that and say, oh, that's the perfect device that we want on the network. So no, hold on a second. Obviously, you work for Microsoft, and you have the right to be on the network because you've had to use a smart card to authenticate. But let me take a look at your machine for a minute. You've got no antivirus software that I want running, so I'm going to have to remediate that. So let's put you in a quarantine for a second. And I'm going to enforce that quarantine through IPsec. I'm not going to let you see anything else. I notice that you're running Windows XP, and that's fine, but you're on Service Pack 1. Yeah, that's really not good. That doesn't even have the firewall. So I'm going to have to fix that as well. I'm not going to push down Windows 7 through the internet, and that'll take you too long. And really all you wanted was access to that Word document on SharePoint. You'd be upset with me. But I am going to push down the latest Service Pack because you need the firewall. And you need that update to the database application that we provided because I don't want you accessing the database and corrupt it for everyone else. So because you've failed that health policy check, I'm going to remediate it. I'm going to push down the Service Pack. I'm going to push down Forefront, Microsoft Essentials, whatever I have licenses for. And then I'm going to go and make sure that that's up to date. And I'm going to install that hotfix to make sure that the client database app doesn't corrupt the data. Now you're healthy. Well, your PC's healthy at least. And I'll let you on the network. It might take you 20 minutes to do the first time, but at that point, your machine's clean. It meets our corporate IT standards, and you're good to go. Now you can use that machine whenever you want. And there's partners of ours that support NAP for other platforms as well, and also other management tools. So for example, you can leverage System Center to not only take a look at the health and do you have the software, but distribute the software. Based on inventory of specific applications, do you allow them on the network or not? Whatever the case might be. So again, this is also a cross-platform solution. And then there's the data isolation. If I'm going to have access to data, regardless of how I'm getting it, whether it's through the cloud, if I'm using Office 365, if I download a file, I want to make sure if it's a really, really important file, that even if the device falls into the wrong person's hands, they're not going to be able to open up that file. It might be the marketing plan for the next version of your product. And I'm really leery about you having that on the phone. But anything short of just blocking firewall access on the device and at corporate, on the corporate network to things like Dropbox and SkyDrive and Gmail and all these other things, you're going to be sharing those files. So at least what I can recommend or maybe even require is the fact that you're going to have a policy on there that only an FTE within my organization has access to those documents. And there's actually tools that help you do that. So for example, if you save your files to a file share, you can use the file classification infrastructure, FCI, in Windows Server 2008 R2 to automatically encrypt it, for example. You could do it in an Exchange. So there's ways that you can do that. But it's very important, and I know that we're working on other platform support for that as well. Yeah?
Well, yeah, that was actually my question. What are the other devices?
Yeah, the question was what are the other devices that we're supporting. I don't want to speak for the other product groups, but I know that we're looking to see which other devices to support for that. That right now, depending on what you have, may be a gap where you're limiting it to only the Windows platform, but I know that we're either through partners or through ourselves, we're working on ways to expand that support to make it easier. I'm not sure whether that's the USB power stick or the Crunch Bar yet. We'll wait until the end and we'll see. Nobody else has asked a question. You might get both. So here's the different types of devices. So yeah, right now the RMS support is not there. But if it's extremely important files, you're going to want a well-managed device to have access to it. So it might be an extremely narrow scope solution, but that is a solution that you have. I won't read through all of these things. Okay. So the third part is access to corporate applications themselves. And there's actually several different ways that you can do that. All of these different types of devices, my little pink laptop came up on there too, though mine's a lot of a hotter pink, maybe even a powerful electric neon fuchsia than the pink one that's there. But nonetheless, we have a a Windows phone, we've got an iPad here, and we've got just another type of netbook. They can all access applications through the internet, especially if you have a web portal or if you're sharing things with Office 365 or Google Apps, whatever the case might be. And then, of course, you're accessing things directly within your corporate network, whether it's an application database application, a SharePoint site, et cetera. And so one of the ways that you can provide access to it is by using a product that we have called Forefront Unified Access Gateway. This is a cross-platform mechanism of enabling you to have different types of access to different file systems or data repositories, depending on the type of platform as well as the health that they have. So for example, if I'm a partner, when I log on to that portal page, I'm going to log on with a user account that's going to identify the fact that I'm only going to have access to specific SharePoint sites. And even then, I can define whether it's read or read-write access. If I'm an employee on my fully managed machine, that machine's in the domain, I have the access as if I was on the corporate network. If I'm at home, on my home PC, or I'm at my friend's house, or I've got one of those kiosks at the airport, which I'm sure are really, really secure, then I can go and access something, but it's going to be read-only. So maybe I'm just taking a look at our internal portal for our employee handbook, for example. I can go to a SharePoint site and download or view a file, but I'm not going to be able to upload anything to it. It also enables me to allow specific access to applications, get to terminal server pages, or anything else. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to my nice laptop here that unfortunately, let's see, am I able to control through here? Yes. So I've got a couple of virtual machines here that I'm going to show. So this is from a kiosk, a portal. And I'm going to go to my main page, and I'm going to log on. Excuse me. So I've got 4 virtual machines running on a little laptop here. So the incredible speed that you're going to see on this demo, don't be too impressed with. It's all just running off of a little machine here. So the first thing it's doing is it's checking the device compliance. It's finding out what my device is even before it finds out who I am. And so now I'm going to log on. Now you'll see that I'm connected to remote app and desktop connections. I'm on my specific portal. And you'll see that because of the device that I have, I only have access to a couple things. I don't have access to Microsoft Word. I have access to OA. And I have access to my intranet site. And so I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to assume that that VM is up and running and it's connecting very well. And we'll try to get access to it. And it should pop up in a second. This is the part where I tap dance a little bit, but I might have to eat the Crunch Bar myself. There we go. Ha, you guys thought it was going to fail, didn't you? And so, again, I can open up these files and I can view them. Let's take a look at some credit limits here. So it's going to contact the server. It's going to pull it down. I can view it within the web page, depending on how it's being set up. I'm going to blame the airport connectivity on this demo. There we go. So I can access this information. I can take a look at it. But I'm only read-only here. So I'm going to exit out of here. If I wanted to actually upload something into this web page, this SharePoint site, I should say, I'm actually going to be blocked by Forefront because it doesn't like the way my machine looks. And so I'm blocked, but I can still access information to view it if I need to. Now, by being able to do this is through policy. So here's the little Forefront server. Oh, that actually is not the right machine. Hold on one second. Sorry. I'll get back into here. There we go. And so I could take a look at the policies that I have set. For example, maximize this if I can. And these are all the different access connections that I have set up. So for example, my SharePoint site, I can edit, and I can go to the endpoint policy settings. And so for example, in order to access it, I have my default web access policy that I have set. For upload, I actually have a specific one here. And I can edit this policy, and I can actually go in. So it's the default. Let's see, which one was it that I had? FEP policy here. I can edit the policy, and I can make sure, for example, and I can drill down into these, but make sure that it's a domain joined machine, for example. It's a machine that I'm logged into, depending on what I'm looking at here. I can also, excuse me, go in through and manage Mac OS policies too. So for example, I can make sure that there is at least some antivirus software running on the Mac, that there's a personal firewall running. I can designate whether it actually is a corporate Mac PC. If that's the case, that one works. Or if it's a special privileged endpoint, if it's my exec's Mac. I can set up all these different policies, and that will allow me to have a completely different one. So in this case, it was blocked because I didn't have forefront endpoint protection running on that machine. So I have no idea whether the file that you've just attempted to upload is safe or not. So I'm just not going to allow it. Excuse me. The question is, can I define policy based on device type? And I believe that the answer is yes. Let me just go in here really quickly. We can create a new policy. Yeah, so for example, I can have, and the screen resolution is not that great. I can click on here, add a policy, and I believe that I can get through anything via WMI, and I can create as a script to actually pull more information out. So I can absolutely do that.
What about non-Windows?
Yeah, non-Windows as well. So there's a Mac OS policy. I don't believe we have the iOS support right now. I can find. I'm sorry, who's asking? Okay, I can follow up with you offline and see where we're at with that. Okay. And for time's sake, I'll kind of skip over a little bit of this because I'm sure that you're familiar with this. But there's also solutions that you've probably already been using for quite a while. Let's keep the data and the applications off the machine altogether. Now, the drawback of that is that I need to be connected. The benefit, though, is that once I'm connected, it's totally a separate infrastructure. So you know what? You can buy the iPad. You can buy the Zoom. You can even have that Windows device that you have at home. I don't care what's on it because that's never going to hit anything. You're going to go to a gateway, a web page, and we're going to serve up your corporate environment, your apps, your data, your settings, if you're using all sorts of other things like folder redirection and application virtualization. And you're going to be running the applications off of our machines instead. So this is the ultimate segregation between the consumer device and your corporate devices. Now with this, and with a lot of these mobile devices, they're coming with support for 3G, 4G support. Even the argument about you're not connected all the time is getting a little bit less of an argument these days. But then again, you've got the cost to pay for. So it always boils down to what are the requirements of the user role and what is the benefit that they can have, and then finding that right balance between it. The other one is, of course, virtual desktop infrastructure, VDI. This is a case where you might want to have access to those, not only based on the user role, but also the type of device that they're having access to. You know, it's interesting. So the demo that I was going to show, and I'm thinking it's not going to, oh, he's going like that. I don't know if I want to try it or not. Let me, which one was that? E? G? No. Oh, wait, the machine went to sleep. I can use any device I want at home or away, and it really doesn't matter because I'm just going to connect up to it directly. Oh my gosh, it's working. Sweet. Thank you very much. Excellent. So this is my kid's netbook. You can see I've got the picture. I'm not going to log into Link right now. Of course, the machine went to standby mode, so I might have to re-VPN in. I'm not going to have this machine accessing the corporate network through direct access because it's my kid's netbook. It's not domain joined to my machine itself. So I'm actually going to have to VPN in. So luckily, I've got my VPN software here. And just so you know that there's no tricks up my sleeve or anything like this. And again, this is not my PC. Here's my dog and my hamster, though. They were having a little bit of a stare down. The hamster's not afraid of the dog, and I'm afraid the dog's going to choke on the hamster, so I'm not quite sure who's going to win that one. But it makes a cute wallpaper for my daughter. So while this is happening, I have no idea what's on that machine. I don't know if, I've been a bad dad. I've been a bad Microsoft employee. I haven't been really keeping up with whether or not there's any antivirus software on there. And they're loading up all these web-based games that download a little bit of a client. And my son downloads all those really cool, human noise applications and everything else that he likes to put on. So I really am not comfortable with putting this machine on the corporate network at all. But I left my laptop at work, and so I might need to get some stuff done. So by using the corporate gateway, actually, I don't know why I keep walking back. I think I can do it from here. And using our partner software from Citrix, Zen Desktop, I can actually log in and get the applications or the full desktop that is provisioned to me as Jason Lesnick. And so we'll connect up to this server here. In theory. There we go. Excellent. Oh, maybe it's not working from there. Okay. I will log on. And then based on the policy that we have, it knows that it should automatically give me a full desktop running Windows 7 Service Pack 1. It has the remote FX capabilities that we have in the Service Pack for the server. If it wasn't me, it might actually give me just applications. So an icon to our data entry application or a specific SharePoint site or a time card site. So I can get to it through, regardless of any type of device, because Citrix provides that multi-platform support for us, but it gets me connected to what I need to be connected to. And again, because we would use folder redirection and define our applications through policy and things like AppV, I'm going to have access to my environment. I'll have my wallpaper, my data, the applications I use, as if I had my laptop and I didn't forget it at home, even though it's coming off of this little underpowered netbook that has nothing very useful on it. So this is the first time I'm logging onto this device, so it'll take a little bit of time. And the screen resolution is not that great, but this will pop up in a second. Here we go. Are there any questions? Yes?
So how are the mobile device policies applied? Is it something that outlines or something that you, like each device is unique in this environment, configured differently, depending on how you access it and what device where? Is that the only policies that you have put in place, or are there legal documents and users have to sign, things like that?
It's actually a very good question. So this is not just a question about policy on a technology level. I actually do think that that deserves the, instead of the bag of milkshake, the power stick. There's a lot of things that you need to consider, and the technology sometimes is actually the real easy one. We have the technology, our partners, our competitors have the technology. That's something that you can solve. You need to invest in it, you need to learn it, deploy it, etc. But the bigger one is the data compliance, the regulatory things, the different issues around the world. So one organization that wants to deploy or enable consumerization might have a problem in one country. You know, for example, there might be like the law in the UK that I've been told that I can't wipe your machine if you bought it. So the policy is not relevant unless there's a way around that. I might not be able to store data on a machine that's outside of Germany, for example. Whatever the case might be, you need to really look at policy as well as risk. So for example, I understand that the end users want to be able to have access to that type of productivity on a specific device. And you know what? If it's an end user that just has some, I don't know, price data sheets and stuff like that, if the laptop gets lost, we can mitigate that. Or if it's an iPad, for example, we can probably mitigate that. If it's the CEO of a large company and they've got all sorts of information on, you know, from the board of directors and stuff like that, you know what? It's not worth it at all. I'm not going to give it to them. Or like in the case of the, you know, President Obama, we're going to have to go out and get some special software just to be able to protect that. As an organization, we don't want to invest in IPsec. But maybe we're going to have to for specific users and enforce something like this on the network, you know, whatever the case might be. So you really kind of have to understand what technologies are out there, what laws you have to you know, comply with, but then also what is the risk to your company for that specific user or that user role, the data that they have, and make sure it's an acceptable risk. I mean, right now we're in the process of having to document our own consumerization strategy that our IT department's actually going to have to present to the Microsoft board of directors, because there are specific people that have access to stuff, you know, whether it's source code, whether it's, you know, plans, financial plans, whatever the case might be, that, you know, for them it's just not an acceptable risk, regardless of who they are, or they're going to have to use a specific device with specific technology put into place. So a lot of it has to do with that risk as well. It's not just about technology. But one of the really key points really is around making sure that you identify the users, identify their roles, and make sure that you have a good solution for each of them. It's typically not going to be a blanket solution for everyone, if that helps answer the question. It's an IT function, but I have a feeling because ultimately they're delivering the solution. My goal is to actually get them to document that into an IT showcase white paper, so I'm hoping that that will be helpful to you when we do that. But I'm sure that they're working with legal and with compliance and all the other groups that need to be involved. You're absolutely right. It's the IT department's function to implement it, but it should absolutely not be an IT function to plan it. It's a joint partnership with a whole bunch of different groups. And in many cases, you're probably not doing that today. Not as a knock, it's probably just not part of your job. This is really stretching everyone's comfort level. And the really interesting thing about it, too, is that no one has really done it completely for a long enough time to understand what the actual risks and benefits and mitigation plans are. You know, I know of a few customers that are definitely very well far ahead of the game with it, but even them, you know, they've probably done it for a year or a year and a half maybe, or 2 years. And so, you know, the long-term effects, it's almost like a drug. You know, this drug helps you. It cures the common cold. But we've only had it for 6 months, so I really don't know if it's going to cause everyone to have hives in 5 years of taking it or something like that. We really just don't have that data. So we're kind of all in this together. I'm going to kind of skip over this. So, you know, on the floor we've got Citrix. They're one of our key partners in desktop virtualization. The Citrix receiver is one of the top applications, from my understanding, in the Apple App Store for business apps. They've got it for Android devices, for RIM devices. So they've got a client that enables you to gain access to a remote desktop service application or desktop, or a complete VDI scenario like with the one that I just showed you. And so, you know, you should look at them as part of the solution if you're going to enable non-managed devices access to your environment, whether it's specifically applications or a full rich desktop itself. And we're trying to make the licensing easier from a virtualization point of view to be able to access those devices through things like the VDA license, for example. I would love to see someone access a full Windows desktop from a smartphone. I'm not sure how useful it is, but nonetheless, you can do it. Skip through that. And so again, there's several different options depending on the user needs. In this case, there's absolutely a lot more access capabilities across platform. And so I really don't have, I've got about 2 minutes and 36 seconds left, but it's great if you're going to use a Windows device. And personally, I'd prefer that you did. I know that you're not going to. And so we spent all of this time talking about what you can do to enable non-Windows devices or non-managed Windows devices access to your corporate resources. There are Windows devices. We're starting to see some of our OEM partners come out with some devices. There's ASUS devices. Some are relatively large. Some are smaller, like an HP and a Fujitsu and others that you'll see on the market. So I wanted to just really quickly share, well, what are we doing from a Slate point of view as well? We're working very closely with our hardware ecosystem, whether it is the chip manufacturers or the hardware vendors themselves, to really focus on building the smaller form factors, keeping the performance as much as possible, focusing on the battery life, all the things that are making other products very compelling, but try to meld the benefits of that form factor with the benefits of running Windows, having it be able to be domain joined, letting it run full Office, whatever the case might be. And so you'll start to see some of those devices coming out. Some have already come out on the market. Certainly, we need to focus more and get them focused more as well. There's things that they need to do from the hardware side that we're working with them on. There's things that we need to do on the software and the application side to make things, for example, touch optimized, for example. So we're working on that as well. And I think that we'll have an excellent solution for you on there. These are the things that we're thinking of in terms of being able to focus on an enterprise-designed solution. The security, being able to have, for example, support for TPM chips or smart card readers or thumbprint readers so that it can leverage the existing security infrastructure that you have today. Being able to be fully managed in the way that you can distribute software and updates and all those different things. A choice in hardware so that you're not locked into just one, but you can have the choice from different vendors, but also different types of form factors. I had a customer briefing, and I was showing them the ASUS device, the ASUS Slate that's out. And the CIO looked at me. One of his guys had a Windows tablet PC. And he's like, well, what's the difference between this ASUS tablet and the tablet PC with the pen? They both had pens, but the other one had it was a convertible with the keyboard. And I just looked at him and said, well, that one's got a keyboard. Other than that, there's no difference. We want an enterprise operating system running Windows, and really, based on the hardware ecosystem, it's the choice of the end user. If you want a really small device that you're just going to use because you're traveling and you don't want to bring your laptop, there's the HP, there's the Fujitsu. If you want a full laptop, I've got this nice big powerful one. It's a really big wide screen. It's got 8 gigabytes of RAM and it weighs a ton. But that's fine because that's my priority. I don't like the smaller devices. But I can go across the hardware ecosystem and choose the device that's right for me. But the bottom line is they're all running Windows and Office and all of my applications that I've been given through my IT department without having to do any rewrites. I'm going to skip through a few of these slides. This slide deck will be up there. We're focusing on, obviously, boot time is a big thing, working to enable better SSD drive development. We have some things in Windows 7 to make boot up a little bit faster, but working with OEMs to kind of optimize around that. We're also working with ISVs to try to make sure that the applications take advantage of it. Windows 7's got touch capabilities in it, but the applications aren't designed for that. So for example, we've worked with vendors, and at CES, there were several that were announced. We have a Product Scout website that you can go to and take a look and download evals of a bunch of different products that are on the market today that are touch-enabled. The USA Today application on a Windows Slate looks exactly like it does on iPad. As you're close to it, I guess, I won't say exactly. If you're looking at writing your own applications, you can write an application that's touch-based as well. And if it's for a specific type of line of business case, like on the floor of your stores, the UI the desktop UI doesn't really matter as much as the application itself. So you can write your applications in HTML5, in Silverlight, whatever the case might be, and optimize it for touch very easily. And we've got field guidance. You can contact your account teams so that you can write those applications as well. And of course, one of the things that we think is a benefit from Windows devices is that when you go home, we can't forget about the consumer and consumerization of IT. Those devices can connect up to their Xbox, to the Play, with Play 2, for example. They can print very easily. They can go and even have verticalized applications, ruggedized applications for construction or sanitized devices for the medical field, et cetera. So with that, I'm out of time. I'm going to just kind of skip through the rest of these slides. But please feel free. There's a couple other sessions that have either happened yesterday that you can review or that will be happening on like PC management. I didn't mention Windows Intune. Intune is a cloud-based management solution that lets you manage Windows devices, even ones that are your end user's home devices, if you want to license it that way, so that if they're going to be connected, I can take remote control of them. I can make sure that there's no malware on them. I can push down the security updates, et cetera. So that's a great management tool from a consumerization point as well. Please feel free to take a look at the different resources that are available through the web page, as well as go down to our TLC and ask questions if you want. Fill out the eval forms. We were trying to figure out what the thing in the middle is. We've decided that they are USB defibrillators for hamsters. And so fill out the forms, and maybe you can win one of those as well. If you don't, just come up, and I'll give you the crunch bar instead. So with that, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate the slow start. Enjoy the rest of the week.